Good afternoon and welcome. I am Frank Bonafilia. I'm Executive Director of the Edison Awards. And in collaboration with the lovely folks at the Collaboratory, we'd like to welcome you to the inaugural Lightbulb series. Thank you for coming today. It's a great turnout, and we anticipate having this series on a quarterly basis from now moving forward. So great panel today. We'll introduce them in just a few minutes. I am here really to talk to you about how much of an honor it is for the Edison Awards to be in Fort Myers. Many of Edison's innovations started in this town, and the history of Edison is still present today. For those of you that have not been here before, the tracks right out here is where Edison, Firestone, Eastman, Latimer all came in by train back in the day. And part of our mission and commitment to this city is to bring some of the greatest minds or greatest innovators of today from around the world back to Fort Myers to help address some of the questions as the community grows, but also to really rethink what history moving forward is going to look like. There's so much innovation, there's so much potential in this city, and we're very happy to be here. We're celebrating our 35th year and growing deep roots in Fort Myers. Our mission is to recognize, honor, and foster innovation and innovators. Through this partnership and this series with the Collaboratory, we're not only bringing the thought leaders to this community to not just talk about the future of innovation, but also to provide insights and solutions to regional issues. Some of the challenges that this Southwest Florida is feeling today are being solved by some of the greatest minds. We have access to those minds at Edison Awards, and that's what we're bringing these companies in here to talk about how they solve some of those challenges as well. If any of you have not heard of us or have been interested in attending, both the City of Fort Myers and Lee County have partnered with the Edison Awards. We're offering a local resident or regional discount. We have a flyer listed here on everyone's desk. If pricing for our event is of an issue, please let us know. After 34 years in New York, we've made it to Fort Myers, and we're really excited to be part of this community.
Weather's way better now.
True. When you go to this event, the Edison Awards, if you do decide to attend, it's more than jet suits. It's more than electric motorcycles. It's more than cutting-edge materials. It's more than amazing networking with executives. We have people coming here who are business owners, C-level executives, changing the world from all 50 states and 14 different countries, and they're coming, most of them, to Fort Myers for the first time. So once again, very proud to be part of this community. Have sold out the hotel for 2 nights and can't think of a better place to bring these top innovation minds. To bring a vision to life, it takes connections, collaboration, capital. It takes leaders who are committed to learning and growing. And with this Lightbulb series, it will be occurring on a quarterly basis and will address subjects that are near and dear to the regions. We'll focus on solution-based ideation, and we'll hear from these global executives. Excuse me, 1 second. We hope you enjoyed today and plan to attend the Edison Awards and all of our future Lightbulb series events. For questions about the Edison Awards, please find Lindsay Birch in the back of the room, as well as myself and Jean Bradley, who'll be happy to answer any questions related to the Edison Awards. But without further ado, it's my pleasure to pass the mic to Sarah Owen to kick off the Lightbulb series. So please put your hands together for Sarah.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sarah Owen. I lead the team here at Collaboratory. And Frank, you use so many of the words that we love around here: collaboration, connection. We created this space. We opened in 2018. And what we had in mind is, how do we how do we really make connections happen? How do we build capital around connections? How do we establish relational wealth between each other to get things done? So this is exactly the kind of conversation that we want to have, and today is a conversation. It's, often we run into people, especially in Southwest Florida at an event or something, and we have like 2 minutes to ask, the same 3 questions. How's it going? What's new? Are you busy? But we never really often get a time to dive into what they're thinking, what their experiences are. So we want to invite you into the conversation. Some of you may have already scanned the QR code that is going to allow you to put questions as we're talking and you're hearing their responses to other questions. If you haven't had a chance to do that, it's right here in the front of your program. If you just take a picture of it, you don't have to download any apps, nothing like that. It just comes up instantaneously. You'll see some preloaded questions in there that you can vote up or down. If you don't, that means that just some people haven't put any in yet. They haven't thought of any. And you can, if you see a question and it's the one you were going to ask, you don't need to re-enter it. But if you want to vote it up or down, that would be great too. If you're having any trouble with this, just give your program a little wave and one of our team will come by and help you with it. Because the fun of this is going to be all of you getting to ask those questions that you don't get to ask at the cocktail party. So I know that this whole group is really excited to do that. You can read all about them in the program, a really extensive bio, but I wanted to give them a chance to introduce themselves, just familiarize them with you. They'll kind of talk to you about what they're currently doing, what their role in their company is. And I want you to add to that, what was your very first job when you entered the workforce, right? When you kind of officially said, I'm going to work now, what was that very first job like for you? Because today we're going to talk about retaining, recruiting people. We're going to be discussing some of the challenges with the supply chain. I was talking to a couple of panelists before we started about all the new research coming out about the Great Resignation and people having regrets. Now it's called the Great Regret instead of the Great Resignation. So lots of topics and then topics that you will start with. So I'm going to start with you, Helen. Helen Edenfield is the Global Director of Operations Excellence at NeoGenomics and chair. I wish we had a whole series that I could just talk to you about women at Neo. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. But tell us a little bit about your role at NeoGenomics and also that first job.
Certainly. So I am the global leader for Operations Excellence and Facilities for NeoGenomics. There's a lot of other departments that fall under that. One that we're going to be talking about a lot today is supply chain. So I also have that for our organization. We have about 600,000 square feet of real estate, domestic and international, because our book of business for laboratory is both here and we have several sites overseas. So I'm sure we'll be talking about that. My first job in high school was a cashier at a grocery store.
Very good.
Yeah, thanks.
I always think it's interesting to find out those things. Wonderful. All right, Brian Rist. You've just recently changed roles.
Right, I did, but I first have a question for you. I mean, you have, the three of you, such dynamic people, and then you got me here. And so I'm trying to figure this all out.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you mentioned, Sarah, my name is Brian Rist, and probably what most people know me as is 26 years ago, I started a company called StormSmart. And then we grew to become the largest hurricane protection company in the country. And it was based here, is based here in Fort Myers. And we grew from about 2 or 3 guys just kind of fooling around to today, I think they employ over 350 people. And so I had the honor of kind of guiding that company all through the growth years. We went on to be featured by Inc. magazine 5 different times as one of the fastest growing companies, privately held companies in the United States. But then last April, almost a year ago exactly, we sold the majority interest in StormSmart to a private equity company. And just prior to that, we started a foundation, and that's kind of how we started getting to know each other. And it's called the Rist Family Foundation, and its goal is to try to make Southwest Florida, the world, a better place. And so now I spend the majority of my time working in the foundation, working with the different colleges around Southwest Florida, and even one still in Massachusetts where I graduated from, and try to I truly believe that education is the way you truly solve problems, and so we've tried to help the colleges around here. I helped them so much that I was silly enough to allow them to talk me into becoming an adjunct professor out at FGCU. So now I'm a professor too, or adjunct professor now. But to answer your other question, it was a while ago. When I first got out of college, my first real job was I did the books. I was an accounting person for an Italian bakery in Hollywood, Florida. So how I got from there to here, I have no idea, but that was my first job.
Yeah, those are pretty good perks.
Right.
You and
Nice
I,
bread,
yeah,
right.
you and I have been talking about workforce for a while because first as future makers,
Sure.
I know NeoGenomics is a proud future maker. I'm a future maker,
Right.
and then
I'm a
now
future
the role,
maker.
and you're a future maker. We got a lot of future makers in the audience today too,
Right.
and so I love how your philanthropy and your experience from Storm Smart is all kind of coming together.
You know, I think we all know that in order to have a great company, you have to have great people. So, and they just don't magically appear. So a lot of our efforts was always towards taking our employees that we thought were great employees and trying to make them greater. And that's a huge challenge. I think, you know, there's a lot of business people in this room and a lot of people who employ people. That's a challenge we all have. And so I kind of don't think you get a right to complain about something unless you're willing to do something about it. And so, yeah, that's a big part of what we do.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, Ryan Carter, so great to have you here.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
Okay, yeah, so Ryan Carter, I'm president, I guess co-founder, co-owner of Scotlynn USA. So we're a freight brokerage firm primarily, but we operate a trucking company. We do distribution throughout the state of Florida, and we're kind of, that's our space. And so we primarily haul perishable products all across North America. This week is our 12-year anniversary, actually, from when we started. So March 29th, 2010, I moved to Southwest Florida with my brother and met my business partner down here who's Canadian. And it was my first real experience in Fort Myers. And I'm very glad that happened, obviously. But 12 years ago, I mean, we were in, 800 square foot space using a fax machine, which I don't think our new employees know what that even looks like. So a lot has changed. And so over the years, we've grown quite a bit. We have an office in Tampa, office in Indianapolis, and we have close to probably 370 people on our team. We might do close to $1 billion in sales this year, which for us is pretty incredible to have the growth we had, and it's because we've had an incredible team this whole time. It's been a little harder to find the team the past couple of years, but we're there, and so that's in a nutshell what we do. We solve the problems in logistics for other companies and make their lives easier. My first job out of college was working for a logistics company in Cincinnati. I had no clue about the industry. All I knew is, and it's kind of the same things that kind of guide what we do now, is I knew with this company, my first job out of school, I thought I liked the people that were there, I liked the culture, and I thought I liked the industry. I wasn't sure about the industry, but it was fast-paced, shipping fresh produce. That interests me, and we kind of operate that same way. We try to focus on creating a great culture surrounded by great people in an industry that is still the same, but a very fast-paced, dynamic industry. So.
Yeah, and I had the recent opportunity of touring your new facility, and so you've really kind of captured that culture and how you want to create a space for people that work alongside you to be all day. So it's an incredible space.
Yeah, we're competing with the work at home careers out there because we are very much working on teams. So having a great facility is pretty important.
Yeah, it's really, really great. So I know that I think, Brian, you mentioned there are a lot of business people in the audience, and I think probably if they admitted it, they're hoping that you're going to give them, one of you is going to give them to the secret to attracting and retaining a great workforce, because we know it's something that everybody's struggling with, and it doesn't seem like I go many places. No matter any social issue the Collaboratory is taking a look at, it's all connected. It all comes back to, people able to have a good job, people being fulfilled in their work, and the businesses in the community being able to attract and retain talent. So we spend a lot of time talking about what's going wrong. I would love to hear from each of you. What are you most hopeful about? What's something that's really working, whether it's the space you're creating or something that's gone on in Future Makers? Just what are the thing that you see that you're thinking, this could really be a big help? And you've got different perspectives here, so I think it'll be interesting. Brian, what are you most excited about now that you've kind of been able to take a step back and see what's out there?
There's just so many things. One of the things I was talking to someone about yesterday that's changed, I think, in Southwest Florida, because we've been here for almost 30 years now, is when I first was here, there was this Collier, Lee, Charlotte type of division. It was like almost like walls, and we were competing against each other. And now I think there's more regionalism in the whole thing. So I think between the schools, the FSWs and FGCUs, and all the schools really of the area, they've kind of made this more regional. And we're no longer 3 different counties or 5 different counties. We're really trying to get to be one and solve problems together. So that part is truly exciting to me.
Yeah, that's good. That's good hope. And I love looking out in the audience today and seeing people represented from the different counties where, a number of years ago, we would have just primarily had Lee County folks in here.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great point. Ryan, what about you? What are you excited about that you think, I think this is really working or could work?
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100% with what you're saying. Collier County folks normally wouldn't make a drive here today, and you're seeing that come together. And people, you have things like the Golisano Children's Hospital, where people started to realize, how important it was not to just take care of one county at a time, because our workforce, for the most part, if you get on I-75 in the morning, you see where the workforce in Collier County is coming from. Mm-hmm. It's coming out of Lee, and I think the communities are finally not being as stubborn and understanding that for one county to be successful, both counties need to be successful. So that's a great point. But for us, we do a lot of great things that I think add value to our business and add value to the experience for our employees. But one thing that now that the pandemic is getting a little bit better for volunteering and doing stuff in community now, you're having events again. I've been to, probably 10 fundraisers in the last month. But it's good though. I mean, that's how you generate money for organizations that help all the people of our community. But for us, we have a community outreach initiative that we started 10 years ago. Everybody in our organization has to do 16 hours minimum of community outreach. And we started that a long time ago just because we felt like you have to give back to the community that gives so much to us. But what it's done is, we've moved into this era where social issues are so big, and being a part of the community has become front and center, and now that's becoming part of a good employer. Like not just what the values are of the employer, but what are you guys physically doing, or what's part of your culture in the community. And so, this year alone, we'll put over 5,000 hours of community service back in the communities we work in, which I think has a great impact. And you have college kids coming out of school who don't know anything about what we do. Our company name sounds like a country. They're not sure what it is. And now we have, a building that they're like, well, I know you have a building. I still don't know what you do. But at least they're saying, but one thing's for sure, I've seen, you had 10 volunteers at this event helping, or I see your social media posts of you guys doing such great things for all the different organizations here in our community. And so we've attracted talent simply because that checked one of the first boxes applicants had to come work. And so,
Get on to what you said, Ryan, because I when I look around this room, especially, and Sarah, you probably were the champion of this whole thing, and that is that there's so many people now, or more people now, there's never enough, working together to try to make this place a better place. Where before sometimes we all had our head in the sand and we were all just worried about ourselves. Now, I mean, you look around this room and you see these people and they're just doing some amazing things. And, like you, Ryan, there's just a lot of fundraisers going on, but I see a lot of these people at all these fundraisers, and it's just so good. And so, many hands make lifting a boat so much easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you make a good point about what that means around recruiting and retaining your workforce, how important that is. I want to get back to that.
Yeah.
Helen, what about you? What's something that you're particularly seeing or excited about?
So I think for us, early on, pre-pandemic, we were you have to be in the office, you have to be in the office. What the pandemic has done for us as an organization is brought to the realization that hybrid or remote work is possible. So that has opened up a world of recruiting for us that we did not previously have. So that's something that's exciting to us. But I do want to go back to what Brian and Ryan both hit on, and that from a community standpoint, if we're talking about just the Southwest Florida area, I have as Ryan, have other domestic and international areas that I have oversight and look into. But here locally, I think the sense of community, the cross-functional working with other organizations, whether we have an event coming up May 14th that Ryan's team is helping facilitate some of the work that is going on and having that involvement, but also through Horizon Council. We have a group that I'm chairing that is focused on Southwest Florida as a whole. How do we recruit? Because it's not just a job, it's a way of life. So how are we layering in other things that people are interested in, such as sense of community and how they're going to raise their children, and so the school system. And because when remote is a possibility, then they're not just looking at, oh, I need to go here because there's the benefits, right? It's a more community-based look when people are searching for jobs because they can live anywhere. So I think that that's pretty exciting that we're focused on that.
Yeah, that gives me a lot of hope. Those are all really good things that are happening right now and are real that we can kind of lean into. I think I want to circle back around, and then I'm going to get to some of the audience questions around this intersection of philanthropy and workforce retention, in particularly, and attraction. Where those worlds really meet and what's the role of philanthropy. Brian, I know you're supporting a lot of entrepreneurial activities in the community now in your new role as chair of the Rist Family Foundation.
Right.
You mentioned it, that people that you're recruiting are mentioning that they see that part of your culture. You talked about this creating of a community, and I can tell you, I've been in philanthropy for almost 20 years, and there was a period of time when I would be at a party and people would run from me. Not because I have such a bad personality, but they saw me coming, and what do they think? She wants me to sponsor a golf hole, or she wants me to give a donation, right? Like me coming over meant, what does that mean? And I think philanthropy nationally and as a whole, and particularly in this region, is beginning to do a lot better coordination around that. There's a Price Waterhouse study that directly links the retention of workforce to if they really believe that the senior leadership isn't just saying it, not just wearing matching t-shirts and going out and planting a tree, but is really engaged and involved, everything from purchasing all the way through to social justice issues. And I've seen it in the work that Tessa Lesage on our team leads with the Future Makers Coalition, where the idea of philanthropy and people contributing dollars to make sure that we've got a strong workforce. But how have you all seen, it sounds like you've each seen it in kind of specific ways. Where do you think, beyond I'm going to sponsor an event, or I'm going to go work at the food bank, how do you think these worlds can best support each other?
I can start with that. I believe that you lead by example. And when you lead by example, you set a pretty high bar. And I don't believe that when you're talking about recruiting or retaining employees, it's all about money, because it is never just all about money. But if you set an example of trying to make the world a better place, and you truly mean to do that, whether it's through your actions or money or both, then you build a better culture in your company, and you attract better people who in turn want to make the world a better place. So it's a differentiator between you and somebody else who's paying wages. That's one small reason to do it. It creates more pride in what they're doing. They're proud to work for your organization, and that's what you want them to be. Because if it's all about getting an extra quarter, somebody's always going to beat you to that. But if it's about setting an example, making the world a better place, they're just proud to wear your shirt.
Excellent. Helen, what do you think?
I would agree with that. I think that we see it in different things that our organization's doing. We have, I think, 9 different employee resource groups. You mentioned I happen to chair the Women and Allies at NeoGenomics. But we also have diversity and equality and veterans, and the list goes on. But we all have a common thread of wanting to make sure that there's an outlet for people who want to get engaged and involved. And I agree on the aspect of there has to be a job satisfaction and fulfillment level. And those are the people who stay long term, because they're not just after the dollar. They really want to be inclusive and involved in something. Mm-hmm. And so creating that environment where if you have an idea, and you want to start an employment resource group, or if you want to work for, American Cancer Society and sponsor something, whether it's a fundraiser or just, we have a whole group that is doing cards for the Children's Hospital and cancer survivors and things like that. So small things where they can plug in and giving them the opportunity to do that. We have seen an increase of participation throughout COVID, because maybe their social lives aren't as active, but being able to provide that sense of community has been huge. And it's not, to your point, just a fundraising or the monetary side of things. It's just an opportunity to be plugged in.
Ryan, anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, there's a couple things. So, the being out there in the community, doing things, I think, especially if it's something that's really pushed by management or by your organization, there's a lot of great messages that you guys have covered and also what it does, but it also shows that in today's age, I think you want to show that we're not all about you working, right? You got to have a sense of purpose. Everybody has a different sense of, their purpose is different, but work's a part of it. But if you show as an organization, like, hey, we want you to work very, very hard, but there's other things that we see important. I think that resonates well, especially with the workforce that we see today. One thing that I will say about the volunteerism and being a part of the community, what it does, like for us, we don't have a lot of middle management. There's only, like every organization, there's only so many spots as you go up the ladder. But the way we run a lot of our volunteering is that we let people champion whatever cause they want, right? And so that's why as an organization, we probably touch 30 to 40 different organizations here, nonprofits in Southwest Florida. And so like last weekend, we had 10 people volunteering for an event. This Saturday, we have Immokalee Foundation event we're helping with. We'll probably have 5 or 10 people go out to that. But what it does for your organization is it allows people to show leadership, organizational skills in a different way without assigning it or doing some of the business. And management sees that, right? And so we see, Sarah putting together a group, leading a group that made a big impact. And it gives people, I think, in an organization at any level, an opportunity to show a different set of skills that maybe they didn't get to show because they're only 2 months into the job.
Right.
And so I think that's a big benefit.
And we've seen that too. We actually recruit internally people onto the different ERGs that we have because they may not have exposure, technologists may not have exposure to marketing. well, here's a chance, an opportunity for you to get plugged in and be involved in those things. So it's a tremendous growth factor for a lot of employees.
Great. Well, the questions are rolling in from the audience, which I knew they would. And, we've got a number of educators in the room. Their business is education. We've got school superintendents, people that lead education initiatives. And I see a number of questions here around what is it as people in leading these departments or companies, what is it that you wish the educators knew? Like, what do you want to communicate to the educators in the room? It's a great chance. What do they need to know that it's going to help you all with the workforce of the future?
So for what I've experienced for our industry in particular, so NeoGenomics, we're a cancer diagnostic facility. And so when people think of that, automatically they think, oh, so you need technologists and medical profession. Our business goes so far beyond just those things. And I'll spare you all the sports analogies, but it does take a team for us to operate. And it's for people who very entry positions, our customer service folks, our logistics folks, our couriers, to sales, and it takes this whole entire working group to make one sample that's being tested happen. And I think for the educators, it's just when you think about a business or an area that you want to tackle, it's not always just, the medical profession is not for everybody. And there's a whole level and dynamic group of people who feed into that business and make it operate. So I would say sharing the breadth of something versus honing in on being an MD or a PhD and our technologist would be beneficial because we have shortage in all areas, not just
across the board.
Across the board.
More
so
the generalist approach
yes,
to things.
yes,
Yeah. And now in college, you have to declare what school you want to apply for before you even go. You have to say, this is what I want to do, and you may not have any idea. That's a great point.
And to that point, our technologist, we just went through a budgeting process and working with people on cost per test and those type of things. You get this glazed look on how can I impact that. And it's like, okay, well, let us show you. So we're doing like Finance 101, so our technologists understand budgets. Right. So it's the well-rounded, to your point, generalist view of a position or an opportunity rather than just that very specific, just analyzing cases.
Interesting. Ryan, what would you want the school superintendents to know? A couple of them are in the room.
Yeah. So just this past couple of weeks, we've actually, I think Sean's here. He's head of my recruitment, but we've gone into high schools and talked with students, and that's something new. Like so. Most of our positions are college graduate type roles, but we also have, like every organization, there's people for everything at different levels of life. And so we have like a night dispatch group that talks to truck drivers throughout the night, and there isn't a requirement for a college degree for that. It's our only hourly paid position, but it's very critical. And so given the hiring crunch this problem we've had with hiring for the last couple of years, it's forced us to look everywhere. And so we've gone to high schools and talking to seniors, because there's some very talented people that aren't destined for college, and talking to them about what careers are out there that aren't college degree needed. And so we've been doing that. So I think engaging some of the companies as an educator or a school superintendent, I think that's really, really important. We've seen it lately with FGCU in the last 5 years, a change in I think their approach to who the client is, right? Before the client was always the student. Well, unless you're graduating a bunch of people that are going to work at the university, that's probably, you want to change that up a little. And so, they've changed their focus to the clients, the employers out there, right? Let's design, let's get the employers involved, and let's design the programs that give students the best chance to land a job here in Southwest Florida, a career, a long-term career, to get good pay, all that. And so I think it's very important to engage the organizations that are doing the hiring, that are making a difference in the community, to find out what they're looking for, and and figure out how to get that down into the students.
I've never heard it said that way, about rethinking about who the client is.
Right.
Not having a single vision about just one client when
Well,
you're.
yeah, I mean, you
that's
gauge
really
you
interesting.
gauge the success, I think, of the university based on who they're putting out there and who gets a job. Like if you graduate, 100 students and only 20 of them get a job, I mean, you did a pretty bad job as a university. I mean,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
So Brian, you're in it now. You're
Yeah,
teaching people,
yeah.
so
But,
you're seeing
you know,
it from a different perspective.
I
these
couldn't agree
days.
with these two more. And really, some of the things, it kind of goes back to we talked about in the regionalism. We're in this together. And there was a time when you had the school, you had business, you had government, and they were just like three different silos. And that simply doesn't work. I like the fact that the Lee County schools that I'm familiar with have tried to bond a little bit more with the business world and with the government. And I think that's really, really important. I think that something Ryan mentioned where they went into the high schools, most of us that are involved in business would love to go back to the schools and say, hey, let me tell you the story of how I got here and the path that we took. Something else that Ryan said was, not everybody is destined for college, and there's nothing wrong with that. And some of the most successful people that we employed, because ours is a little different, and it depends on what you're doing, don't require a college education. And so they went straight into some maybe certificate program or something like that and came out where we could really put them to work right away, and they didn't have a big debt. They didn't lose 4 years of their life. And I think we kind of lost focus on the vocational schools of the world and stuff like that, and I think that's a mistake. I think there's just a lot of things that we could all do together to make it work better, and I think it's just all about communication.
Interesting, great. Now, I want everybody to remember I started on a really hopeful note about things that are going well. And this next question from the audience is, how is the workforce housing crisis affecting retention and overall hiring? And I think this is another intersection with philanthropy. Oftentimes when I say philanthropy, we just think, oh, you're going to, your team's going to go and do some important work in a charity. But philanthropy is also this intersection of what are these major social problems that are having an impact on your business. And I think workforce housing is definitely one of them. I know this is on everybody's mind.
There's no doubt. But again, it takes the cooperation of everybody to get this done. You can't ask a developer to develop a low-cost project and pay all the same fees and do all the same things. I mean, they're in business. They won't stay in business. There has to be some kind of cooperation between the government, and the business and the contractors to kind of help it make it more affordable and make it more appealing. That's a tremendous problem because, I was out at the university the other day, and we were talking about recruiting people, and they got all excited about coming to Southwest Florida, and then they came down here for a tour and started looking at where they're going to live, and the numbers just simply don't work. We all experience that when we try to get employees, and how much can you pay people, and you can't have 50% of their wages going to housing. It's a real problem, but it's going to take us all to work together to solve that problem, and everybody's got to give a little bit and make it all work, or else this is going to hurt us.
Yeah. Right. Helen, are you seeing this in your hiring?
It is definitely a challenge. Very similar. We'll bring people in, recruit them. They come in, and when they can't relocate their family because they can't afford a house, it's like, well, what about remote work? So we have been able to sustain well because we're able to have so many remote positions. If we were in the need of bringing them here, which is our ultimate goal, we want them in Southwest Florida, yes, something has to happen with the housing market, for sure.
Ryan, you're recruiting a lot of people straight out of school or high school, and so they're just getting started. Rent and everything. How is that impacting your team?
Oh, it's horrible.
I told you I started early with hope because I knew this would come up.
Well, it's just it's a problem here. It's a problem everywhere. The problem here is probably a little greater than most places. So we tried to be a little creative with some of it. I mean, like our interns this summer, we have 28, 25 interns for the summertime, and so we partner with FGCU to use their dorms. And we didn't go into it planning to pay for all the dorms, but we're paying for all the dorms and paying quite a bit for the interns. But I think it's going to work out really well. It's really the only solution we'd have, or else, especially interns that don't have housing, there's no way they'd find something for 3 months furnished. So you got to look for things like that. I've talked with Scott recently just about the idea of building housing, or partnering maybe with some other businesses to build a multifamily type thing. I don't know. You kind of have to be that creative. In Southwest Florida is challenging with housing. Our office in Tampa is exceptionally challenging for housing prices.
But I don't understand if the government, and I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but if the government is interested in having us solving this problem, why did they have to charge the same amount of fees for low-cost housing as high-end housing?
Yeah, no, there's not many things I look to the government to fix, except This is one thing. I'm just serious. This is one thing where you really have to have the government involved.
Absolutely.
To subsidize some part of it, whether it's taking government land and doing a long-term subsidized lease back to a developer, and not just saying, hey, 20% has to be for low income. You need like 100% or 80%. You got to work out something like that, because counties often give, they'll allow for more density for these developers to build these low cost, whatever housing, but it's only like 10 or 20% that they got to put in there, and that's not going to solve this problem at all.
I'll tell you, Ryan, we've had a couple of businesses in the last 2 weeks call us here at Collaboratory and say, I'm willing to go in with some businesses. What are we going to do? I think some of that innovation, Frank, the whole innovation of, the Edison Awards, this whole thinking of we got to, whatever we've been doing, clearly you guys are communicating isn't working.
Correct.
So we're going to have to come up with some new ideas. Helen, I think you were going to.
Yeah, I was just going to say, to kind of tag on to what Ryan said about, while we're focused on Southwest Florida, this is not unique. Every market that we're in, this is a challenge for us. So, to the point of having government partnership and other partnership to put forth a program for us to action, I think that there are enough employers that would help and support something. I think that that's something that's definitely needed and would be welcomed by a lot of larger recruiters, even smaller.
I don't think we have a choice. Eventually, you are okay with remote working at this moment, but does that last forever?
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
I do think Southwest Florida is from a government standpoint. I think we have great people that work in government. I think the state of Florida has fantastic people that work in government. But especially here in Southwest Florida, we built this building quickly. From getting help from John Talmadge and economic development, things like that. Like, it was very welcoming to build a building. I was just in St. Pete on Tuesday, and a friend of mine, they own Horse Soldier Bourbon, right? So they have the Urban Still House there, and I was talking to the guy who runs that, and he's like, "Oh, it took us 3 years to build this." I was like, oh, "What?" Like, this, it's the size of our kitchen and one sales floor or something. And but he was just listening through just all the roadblocks, and it was a nightmare. And I told him about our experience here building in Lee County, and it was very, very positive. And so I think the will is here, and I think we have some very smart people and some people that are progressive and looking to really grow Fort Myers and Lee County in a very positive way. So I think we're very fortunate to have that. So
I think we just need to really get the right people together and have more time spent on it. It's not going to go away. It's going to become worse before it becomes better. I agree with both of these guys, and I think that we all want to solve this problem. We're all just talking different languages right now, and we can't allow that to happen. We need to get the right people in the room and start having conversations.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
All right, great. All right, I'm going to shift a little bit because we had said we wanted to talk today about workforce, but just as we were starting to get our arms around workforce and come up with some new solutions, we get hit with supply chain issues, right, as a result of the pandemic and other things going on globally. How has supply chain almost layered on top of, all right, we're going to overcome the workforce recruitment and retention challenges, and now, here's this. I don't know if it's affected you all directly. You kind of got out right in the nick of time.
Yeah, but I
yeah.
did, but it didn't mean, it doesn't mean that it doesn't affect us. I mean, I'm still somewhat involved in the company, and I mean, supply chain problems, even if you just go to the grocery store, supply chain problems are everywhere. So,
Is there anything at a business level in business leadership that you can do, or is that just so out of your control that you just have to come up with strategies? How are you seeing that, Ryan? What do you see? Well, you're transporting things, so.
right.
Yeah, so
He is the supply chain.
Yeah, you are the supply chain, yeah.
So we're always good then. No,
Yeah, right.
it just costs more. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, for us, so the only supply chain issues we ever really face is building the building. That's it. I mean, the problems that we see, like in our local supply chain, a lot of it just has to do with the labor force. I mean, we're talking about the labor force. That's usually the problem with manufacturers and shippers. I mean, that's raising the cost. That's tying up the trucks longer. Like I can't tell you how many times, especially during the early on of the pandemic, where our trucks got to a shipper and sat there for a full day when it should have been in and out in 2 hours, just because, either a shortage of people or obviously an outbreak or something. But now it's just a shortage of staff. So a company that's shipping 200 truckloads a day probably is only shipping 130 because they don't have the dock workers, they don't have the warehouse people, and so it's not affecting us as much. We just, we just pick up whatever's available. So, but it does affect all of us for sure. I mean, you're just never. We're a long way from it being better. And the work, it's all tied together though. The workplace housing affects this, and everything.
It's all connected. You can't try to solve it in a silo. And I think a lot of times we come to these things, we see data on one issue, and we say, oh, we're all got to get behind that, and we don't realize. I mean, just what you said there about supply chain being directly related to the shortage in the workforce. It comes full circle.
If you were asking me if I was to advise a business what they could do about supply chain, it goes back to the same thing. It's about relationships. And if you're always trying to beat the heck out of all your suppliers, and it's all about how cheap you can get something, then why do you think they want to do business with you? And so when things get tough and they're going to go to some place that somebody doesn't beat the heck out of them. So you just try to build relationships with your suppliers. I mean, that's not a cure-all, that's by any stretch, but it gives you a little bit of a chance. And so we really work hard on just being loyal to suppliers as much as you can financially be, in hopes that gives you an opportunity to ask for a favor. Doesn't solve everything, but it gives you a little bit of a break.
Yeah. What are you seeing in your world?
So we've seen a lot of increase. 80% of our supplies have asked for an increase. I agree with having relationships with your suppliers. Out of that 80%, the average increase was 7%. We were able, through relationships that we've established, have the average down to 3.5%. So in working with them. And when you're talking about, 100,000 tests, it adds up quick. But also on our equipment. So, cancer doesn't stop because of COVID or supply chain or any of the other things that we have. So we still, unfortunately, are in the business where we're growing and we have to provide more testing. So with that comes additional instrumentation. The least expensive, and I'm talking about the larger processing boxes, are about $200,000 a pop. And they go up to about 1.2 million. So as we're doing that, we have to be very diligent on how we are planning, because something that used to take 3 months is taking 9 months to a year. So we have to be very on top of how we're projecting our growth, to be able just to procure something, forget about the negotiation part of it, but just being able to procure. So it has been challenging. But I think that it's educating yourself and really knowing the market and what's available and having those relationships, because we have gotten, I won't say put ahead of other people, but it's amazing when you call and they go, and it's going to be 9 months, and then they call and go, hey, we can deliver it in 2 months. And so there's some of that relationship that happens. But supply chain is, and I agree, there's all these other dynamics that go into it, but at the end of the day, we're all impacted. Just our business has been really impacted by supply chain.
Let's go a little deeper. A great question from the audience that kind of combines this idea of innovation and technology and workforce and supply chain, and that's AI, or artificial intelligence. Are you seeing innovations in any of your fields or any of your vendors' fields where tech innovations are beginning to close the gap between what you need in the workforce? I know, that you take that all the way and people are like, a robot's going to take over all of our jobs, right? But kind of that balance around, how are you seeing the future of technology solutions to workforce and supply chain? Helen?
So from a workforce standpoint, we see it in the laboratory setting, where we are, through different organizations that we work with, as well as manufacturers, the AI technologies have grown rather rapidly over the last probably 3 to 4 years. We've always been progressive and not being on the cutting edge, but testing and working with other manufacturers to bring efficiencies. But the AI role itself has really taken off. Just had a conversation about it this morning, and there's one technology that we are currently vetting, and if that is the case, it could reduce the need for technologists in a high percent. And it solves part of the gap that we have right now for workforce. NeoGenomics has been great over the years. We've never laid off people because of improvements that we've done internally. We repurpose and have them focus on something else. But there's 2 technologies, one specifically that I had an opportunity of viewing this morning, but another one that's not far from it. So from a laboratory standpoint, we are seeing it significantly come to fruition. We're, again, probably 6 years ago, it's kind of like, yeah, sure. But now we're actually seeing it in real time.
From being a small business, you have to try to do everything and anything you can. We were talking about the supply chain, but through AI, you can do a little better forecasting about the demand of products you're going to need, materials you're going to need in some period down the road. If it wasn't for AI, we would be reacting to today's sales, but through using data, we can kind of anticipate where demand is going to be. So we can use that a little bit to offset some of the supply chain problems. And again, we were a quite a bit smaller company than NeoGenomics or Scotlynn, but we also use it a lot in marketing so that you can be more efficient on using your marketing dollars and more targeted in what you do. So it's all about information. It's all about data. And the person who can figure it out better or more accurately is probably going to be the more successful one.
Yeah, so I guess AI in the trucking logistics world is kind of archaic type business. But it's, the last 10 years, technology's really been at the forefront. It's because it's a massive industry. But for us, there's some AI work done in the market, like you said, the marketing, but it's more for finding applicants, finding people, pairing people with relevant experience or jobs. job skills with what we're looking for. I think that's where there's some AI work. And then we have been working with some companies for like processing payments, processing invoices, things like that, because we have a very significant amount of people that do processing of bills of lading for truckers and stuff like that. And AI is definitely getting in there and helping solve some of the issues with, I mean, that's just a lot of people. So
Yeah.
hopefully we don't need to hire all those people.
Yeah, but it sounds like it's a good mix where it isn't
Absolutely.
this whole thing of, oh, all the jobs are going to be taken over by
No.
technology, and it kind of goes back to the earlier questions about how do we need to prepare the future workforce.
See, I think Helen had it right. We never used technology to eliminate positions. We used technology to take care of processes that really didn't require that higher level of person, and then use that person further up the food chain where that you really needed somebody who could think versus those things there.
Absolutely.
So we never cut people to do, and I truly think it's a great thing that the more we can use technology to do things, and it gives us all opportunities to do better things.
Just to tie AI into kind of the warehousing and supply chain, we use it a lot to evaluate scrap in our warehouse and waste. So we have a large focus over the past year going into this year on eliminating that, utilizing min-max better, especially because of the supply chain issues that we do
Right.
have. But AI is definitely a big part of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great. So I've got two questions that just recently came in from two separate people in the audience, and they're kind of have a juxtaposition to them. So I'm going to ask the first one. Is the supply chain issue artificially driving much higher margins, causing suppliers to rethink high volume with low volume, high margin sales and contracts? Is there like this artificial thing going on?
I wish
right
I could
now?
say you were making more money, because everything just costs you more money. So I don't know who the guy or girl is that's making all this higher margin. It really kind of erodes margin more than anything else. I don't know, Ryan. You're high volume, high turnover.
Yeah, we're pretty. I'll look at last year. So our margin over the last 2 years actually has been quite a bit lower.
Right.
But the cost, the cost per transaction was 30% higher last year.
Right.
The cost for a shipment was 30% higher. So, taking 1 or 2 points less margin on that higher transaction cost kind of washed out, right? It was almost the same. I think I think there's a lot of people profiting off of, or supply chain's just the biggest cop-out ever for a lot of people, and it's created a lower standard of service too, which I think is very unfortunate. It's the easy way for people to blame stuff on not doing good performance.
You can lump it all in there, whatever it is. It's
I
a
hear it all
supply
the time.
chain
Yeah,
issue.
the supply chain issues, and like the babysitter doesn't show up on time, so like supply chain issues. I mean, like that's kind of where we've gotten to,
catch-all, yeah.
and I think we've been conditioned to be like, oh yeah, probably, and it doesn't even make sense. But yeah, like your shipping container, the people shipping containers to the United States, believe me, they're making a lot more money. There's no question about it. Their costs aren't even close to the amount they're charging. But yeah, there's some there's definitely people are capitalizing on this.
But then what happens is I've got to pay more for that material, and so
Yeah.
I have no choice but to raise my prices to offset that triple shipping fee.
Yeah.
So it's a vicious circle down.
It is, and kind of I would kind of definitely side with that there's somebody making money.
Right.
It's not NeoGenomics. So I would say we're in just the industry that we're in. We're caught a little bit flat where we don't have the opportunity to do higher margin because we're regulated on reimbursement. So we get paid by CMS, Medicare, and insurance companies who don't care that there's a supply chain issue. They're going to pay you what your contract is, period. So you have industry that's hit that way. But we are definitely seeing a decrease in margin because our costs have gone up. But the reimbursement has not to reflect that.
So the kind of yang to that yin of a question was somebody said, what really drives lasting relationships? Because you've all talked about them as one of these things to overcome some of the challenges. What really drives lasting relationships beyond profit margins? Can you speak on the advantage of a community-focused or a social responsibility lens? Not out in the community doing charitable work, but as you're evaluating yourselves, what is that? What is the thing that keeps those relationships with your vendors, your suppliers, your employees? What really drives that, do you think?
I mean, I always felt that if I stayed loyal to them and I needed a favor, I had the opportunity to ask them. I had the authority to ask them for a favor. I also understood their business model a little bit better than just openly shopping. And so I could kind of figure out how the numbers worked a little better. I think we all kind of like dealing with people we know rather than just numbers. So those are the things that we use to help make those things here. You know, if we could keep it locally, if that was a possibility, you're helping this economy. That isn't always practical. You know.
Yeah.
I would say for me, in representing NeoGenomics, I'll give a few examples. One of which somebody who's sitting in the room who worked on our building. There's a difference between a vendor and a partner.
Right.
Oh, that is a great
we
distinction.
choose to have partners rather than vendors. I know I can call B&I, who did a lot of our mechanical infrastructure and work, and they're going to pick up the phone, and we're going to figure out a solution, and they're going to take care of me because it is a relationship formed on a partnership versus a vendor. And that's how we look at a lot of different people that we work with. And when you cast it in that light, and you're not just my supplier, you're not just my vendor, you're not just, we value you. You're a partner. We want to do business with you because there are a lot of other companies and organizations that we could work with, but we chose to partner. And in fact, we had a CEO that would not let you use the word vendor because that's how strongly he felt about that. And I think that creates a different dynamic, not only outside with the organizations that you're working with, but it creates a culture with our buyers and the people internally who are reaching out as well. So that's how we have formed even stronger relationships, because when they look at it, when we built the building, we actually had a barbecue, and I talked to people about the work that they were doing. It wasn't just another building. They were actually, by what they were doing, they were creating an environment to where we could do our job and save patient lives. And we had people from every industry who would come into a meeting and go, Helen, I thought about this. What do you think? Because and it wasn't necessarily their responsibility to bring that to light and say, hey, what do you think about this? It's going to make it better. But again, it's because you took the time. They understood what we did, and it just made a joint partnership even stronger. And we've kept those relationships.
You've all talked about this.
Yeah.
You've all, in each question or challenge, relationships comes full circle. What were you going to add to that, Brian?
Did the same people build your buildings?
Sort of.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
kind of.
Right. I thought
of.
that. Right.
Not
whole
100%.
row out there.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Not
At least
100%.
over.
The same, like GC, I guess.
Yeah.
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 So we took a
interesting.
very different approach, and I will go back. I'll take the opportunity to go back just a little bit on Lee County and the Economic Development Office. To Ryan's point, we had such an amazing experience through the whole thing. And when we started this project, we wanted to keep, certainly within the state of Florida, but as local as we could from a Southwest Florida perspective. And 98% of anybody who touched our building was from Southwest Florida, because we believe in community. We wanted to keep it local. and
And
have
then
those,
improve the workforce.
and
It
improve-
put people into jobs.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So Ryan and I shared a construction management. I think that they did a little more of their construction, but we had a very dynamic group, and both of us had really great experiences and have beautiful buildings. So.
Oh, that's great to hear. All right, Ryan, this one I think is particularly for you, and it came in as a follow-up to the AI and technology question, and I definitely want to get it in. So robotic trucking and driverless semis are here. Everybody's got the self-driving bug now. How will this affect the workforce or types of skilled labor required? It's a different skill set.
Yeah. So I mean I get this question every week. From all types of people.
Yeah.
Like anytime there's something on 60 Minutes or front page, like, hey, this is scary for you. What are you going to do? I get that text like, you're going out of business. But just from talking to people in our industry, I mean, the self-driving truck it'll be here one day, but from, I mean, all types of people that I talk to who are very involved in our industry for a lot longer than I have, the consensus is we're still 20, 30 years away from it being it. So it'll change everything. Hopefully I'm not working then, but we'll pivot if we are. We'll pivot to maybe we'll have a self-driving fleet. It's hard to say what's going to happen, but there's too many things standing in the way from self-driving trucks being full mainstream right now. And that's a massive conversation, but there's a lot of stuff that would block it from happening.
But it does speak to what you've all said about this partnership between technical colleges, universities that are preparing the future of the workforce, and how business and the schools stay in touch with each other as those technologies. Innovators that you award through the Edison Awards, how are all of those things connected so we're having similar conversations?
Maybe it's not the end of the world if they are self-driving trucks. Sort of what you were talking about, Helen, before. You don't get rid of people by doing this, you just move them, repurpose them, you said. And so maybe now they're not a truck driver, maybe now they're, logistics, or they're, safety, or there's just other things. And I mean, I've been driving a Tesla for a while, and Ryan's right. It ain't gonna happen tomorrow. It's right, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, who's excited about 80,000 pounds barreling down the highway with no one behind the wheel? You can put your hand up if that makes you excited. But believe me, it'd solve a lot of our problems with hiring drivers. I'd love to have some, fully autonomous trucks out there. It's just the reality is we're a little ways away still. And
do you think that maybe there are applications that might make more sense for self-driving, like if you're in a quarry or if you're in
I think that'll be first, the hybrid type stuff,
right.
The driving through the desert where there's no ice.
You can't hurt anything.
Yeah, on the highway, point to point, that'll come first. They're already testing that left and right. I mean, the labor drives a lot of the demand for technology, right? So years ago, I was out in California. We do a lot of business with Driscoll Strawberries. I can't remember what year it was, but they were plowing some fields into the ground because they didn't have the labor.
Yep.
And what I see out there next, they were designing, this was blueberries, but blueberries grow real low to the ground, so they were designing growing containers that sit yay high so they can have machinery automatically come through and pick the berries.
Sure.
And so when there is a labor shortage, that's what pushes technology faster than anything.
Innovation becomes
Absolutely.
the source of we've got to.
Right.
You said it earlier. We've
Right.
got to figure something out.
Right.
It's that Edisonian idea of you've got to try to come up with a new innovation. You've got to figure something out if
Yeah.
it
I
isn't
would say
working.
that, when I was driving down here today, there was this person, and they would just decided to go into an opposite lane for some reason instead of being where they should be. And I'm not so sure that an autonomous vehicle would have thought to be that stupid, but and truly, I guess because I do drive autonomous vehicles, My Tesla can stop a lot faster than other vehicles. It just reacts faster. I mean, and my Tesla's always paid attention. I don't know that I'm always paying attention. So
Yeah.
there's different sides to everything. But I don't believe you're going to be driving a 16-wheel truck down the road autonomously this year and this century.
Oh, yeah. We're-
As you all are recruiting, there's a question here that I think is kind of going to a more human side. And I've heard this asked before, and I've got one of my kids was an anthropology arts management major. All right, so this kind of speaks to this. And so the question is, how do you balance the workforce development economic outcome that businesses need versus a passion-focused education where the passions of the student are recognized? I think that's one place that sometimes education and business begin to part ways. But you mentioned something earlier where people with other kinds of passions and skills. I know we ask our team, like, what are you really excited about in your life coming up in the future? Do you think there can be a balance between this region preparing the workforce we need for the future and the skills we need, married with this idea of, you mentioned it earlier, purpose or what they're passionate about?
So we this is going back probably about 4 to 5 years ago. We spent a lot of time having everybody take disc profiles or passion profiles, or there was a number of different things that we were having staff do. But it was to really connect and have that engagement to understand what their passion was. The purpose for us was to come to work every day and do their job and everything. But if they weren't passionate, if we weren't meeting that passion profile and engaging that, we had the understanding that we could lose that person. So there was a strong focus on that. And we continue to do that. And through our employee resource groups or opportunities for volunteerism or whatever it is, there's several different sub-organizations within NeoGenomics that you can get plugged into to develop that. So we do a lot of mentoring. And sometimes, and it has happened, where we have mentored somebody out of our organization because it just didn't fit and they weren't going to be happy and they were going to be miserable. And there is, as much as we want to retain employees and give them as much support and whatever it is that they're looking for, sometimes it's not a match. And understanding that and getting them someplace else, you're going to get a referral from that employee because it's like, it wasn't a fit for me, but it'll be a fit, possibly for you. So we have, I don't want to say gambled, because I think that it's part of good stewardship to do that. But it is definitely something that we continue to do, and empowering employees to pursue whatever their passion is.
Is it harder to do now, though, with the workforce shortage? I would just think, you just have the kind of that, you need somebody there tomorrow, and that's the right thing. That's got to be a tough decision when you see things. I mean, whether it's because of a passion or just an employee that isn't the right fit, where are you ever balancing out that kind of stomach ache of like, I need to let them go, but I can't.
But you really can't. You really have to, because in the long run, it hurts everybody. I thought your question had more to do with, when you have a child and they're going to go to college,
Yes.
and they want to be an arts major, and I'm an entrepreneur, and I think it's about skills to help you earn money. So it for me, it has been a struggle a little bit, because I think especially if you're using finite resources, scholarship money and things like that, when again, and I'm sorry to say this, but I'm a business person, and I think that you should get a job. You should do something that's going to help you along your career. I understand being happy and the world needs it and all those things there, but it's a tricky balance.
Yeah, no, it is. It's,
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's a conversation that happens.
Right.
I'm sure in living rooms when students are getting ready to go off to school.
Right.
It happens around business tables. It's kind of this balance.
Yeah, I remember when everybody wanted to be a marine biologist.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't
That's
think
good.
there's a lot of them out there. But, yeah, I don't know. To me, I mean, if you have a passion, like typically nobody's passion is what they're going to do at work. It doesn't seem like it. But you can find a way that it kind of is, right? So, you know, like if somebody came into our organization, like, do they have a passion to talk to truck drivers? Probably not. We do a lot of that. But maybe they like seeing, maybe they have a passion for some of the nonprofits we work with and the money we give to them, how we support them. You know, there's a lot of different ways where once you identify these passions, sometimes people need a little help thinking about how they're doing something. Like maybe people really, you know, have a passion for taking care of people and feeding them. Well, we ship 4,000 truckload shipments of food every week. We're feeding a lot of people. I mean, we were just driving down MLK today, and we passed one of our trailers at Community Cooperative that we dropped off yesterday because they needed somewhere to store hams for the next 3 weeks for Easter. So, you know, that could be one way, like how you're doing something that you're passionate about. The fact of life is you're probably not doing something you're really passionate about for a living, because most of the stuff you're super, super passionate about doesn't earn you money. It's stuff that feels good, it's whatever. So, but I think you can associate whatever your organization is with that passion. Or, for example, we have people with all types of backgrounds that work for us, but let's say you have projects that involve people that are really creative. Like you have some project, well, bring some people off the sales floor that are very creative or whatever, and bring them in part of it. So there is some fulfillment of that passion, but they also earn a living. And so there's a lot of things you can do around that, and sometimes you just got to keep it real. And you just can't do everything that you're super passionate about and make a living.
And going back to somebody coming out with a certain education, and it kind of goes full circle back to, you know, speaking to the educators in the room. So we have people who come out of school and they are a technologist. They analyze cases, they sit behind a microscope. Typically, they are not extroverts. And there have been times that we have some come through and they're just like, you know, bouncing off the wall, and it's like, oh, you are in the wrong role. And so how can we take that individual and plug them into our organization where we know that they're going to thrive, because they're going to burn out just doing the same thing every day, looking at a microscope. Extremely important. I am so fortunate and we're blessed to have those people. But, you know, it doesn't fit everybody. So it's that recognition and plugging them in someplace where we know that they're going to be more successful.
Because all companies right now need so many different types of
Exactly.
skills. It isn't like before where it was just like we have these 2 positions that we need filled. There's a lot of different opportunities.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about this kind of balance between what the businesses need and the labor force needs, and how we create great atmospheres in our community and our employees. And this question kind of speaks to it. Someone asked, as highly skilled labor needs grow and supply costs increase, where does that budget come from to enhance the lives of employees and thus the community? So kind of taking the challenge there of what we're experiencing and what we want. This person wants to know, where does that money come from to do all that?
You know, Helen mentioned something a few minutes ago, and it was about their warehouses and waste and things like that. You have to become much more efficient in your actions and in your processes. And because you can't keep raising prices of everything, that's just inflation. So you have to figure out how to get more done with less. Efficiency, systems, AI, technology, and those things there, or else we're just going to race up the inflation hill.
Exactly. So I lead our process improvement teams for NeoGenomics, and we're looking at everything all the time to try to figure out how we save dollars, so we can take that savings and roll it into opportunity for others. And it's it's not process perfect, it's process improvement. So we're constantly looking at things to better it with the eye of lowering cost or being more efficient and either saving in human capital or supplies.
And the offices of the future too. I mean, Ryan, we started this conversation talking about how you've created this office space that's just ideal for your employees. You can work out there, you can eat there, there's outdoor space, a basketball court. You had to make a decision. You could have built that building for a lot less money, but you made that decision. I think that kind of speaks to this, like that trade-off between what you have to invest and what the trade-off is there.
Yeah, I mean, that was the easiest money to spend, I think. We obviously didn't know what we were getting into with the pandemic. We timed it really well as far as having these facilities and having that tool for recruitment. It's an incredible tool for recruitment, but it's also an incredible tool for engagement and keeping people happy at work. I mean, for the most part, we all have to work, and so you've got to really love who you're working for, who you work with, where you work in your industry. And I don't know, honestly, I just never thought about it as a cost. I knew that was my dream 12 years ago, to finally be able to afford, a great place. And to me, it's just giving back to everybody that gave so much to us to get us to the point where we can afford that building and do that. And it just, I don't know. It was never like a cost to us, and maybe buying used equipment for the gym, because every gym went out of business at the pandemic, and the difference between buying new stuff was the only cost I thought about. But it's easy money when you can do stuff that enhance the health and the happiness of the people that do everything for you.
So it was a decision that you
Just a
made.
decision,
it was a conscious decision, like we're going to invest in
yeah,
this.
like if that put us over and we had to take out, debt against it just to afford that, to me, that's an easy investment. It's hard to see exactly what your return is on that, but I know it's good. That's all.
Well, you probably hear from your employees.
Oh,
about
you hear
it.
from them all the time, and you hear from anybody that comes by the building. The problem with that building is everybody else in town who is maybe supposed to build a new building or they're thinking about it, they're kind of mad because, like, man, you're going to cost me a lot more money, because now they think that's the standard.
Yeah.
But again, if you have the space or the money to do it, I think it's the easiest money spent. It's not that much more. I mean,
when it comes down to it, when you really look at it, the perception of how much more it's going to be. What
I was going to just chime in on the recruiting aspect of it. It really has been a great recruiting tool for us. And we have, in some instances, especially for some of the younger workforce, it has been, oh, wow, and I can do this, and oh wow, you have that as well. So it has been it set us apart from some of our competitors, not to mention, being in Southwest Florida, versus like, Connecticut or something like that. But so it definitely has set us apart. And I think that we looked at it in the same lens, and that this is for our employees that have poured so much into making NeoGenomics what it is, and giving back to them and building a really stellar environment.
You spend more waking hours at work than you do in almost anything else. And if you can do little things, one-time fees, to make your employees be in a better world or a better attitude, so much, we started earlier about this, so much has to do with culture. The challenge we have is finding great employees, but once you find them, you got to make them better, and it's all about culture. And if it's a basketball court or a gym or little things, those are one-time expenses that last for a long period of time and makes your company different than somebody else. I mean, I don't know a lot about the logistics business, but I'm guessing there isn't a lot of logistics companies that have, gyms in their buildings.
No, probably not.
Yeah, right,
Especially trucking companies.
right,
I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
You want to talk about some of the worst places to work. So,
Right, and that makes you different.
yeah.
Yeah. So I've gotten a couple of questions as our conversation has gone on around diversity and how do you build a company culture while also promoting diversity and encouraging different perspectives. Another question, how do you drive diversity in a competitive market? Everyone seems to want to significantly promote a diverse workforce with diverse ideas, diverse races, diverse cultures. How do you handle all that? We're in a community that in just a few number of years we're going to be a minority majority community. What does that look like as you're building the workforce, and how does the recruiting go as you're trying to manage both of those things? This real need. It's always this balance between this real need of needing people, and then how do you promote that culture?
So we've had a focus on diversity and inclusion for many years. I think the last statistic I pulled, 56% of our workforce is female. We also have, I'm going to go back to the employee resource groups, but we also have a lot of diverse employee resource groups that are focused on that, as well as our HR department. We have a lot of campaigns or different things that we do to promote that and have really open dialogue. I've been impressed with the number of opportunities to have open dialogue to break down walls that would create siloed areas within our organization through, about diversity and those type of things. But it's acknowledging it and doing something about it. And I think that our organization has done a great job with that. And it's not a check the box thing. It's not like, okay, yes, we ran that campaign and okay, we're going to check the box. We live it. We're talking about it, but we're also walking it. So I think that that's important. And we do have, again, because we're a global organization, we have many cultures that are represented as well, ethnic and just, views. And so we've tackled that, front and center and made it a priority. And we keep on doing it. Again, going back to that kind of process improvement model, we continue, and as opportunities present themselves, we stay engaged and continue to promote diversity within the workplace. It's important for us as our community changes, us to be representative of our community. So I think that being in mind, that's how we have continued to work on that, because it's not where it needs to be, but it's much, much closer than where it has been in the past.
Yeah, and I know NeoGenomics for a number of years has been a huge champion of supporting future makers and taking a look at how diversity changes the landscape of people seeking degrees and certifications. So that's been part of your culture, both in community support and in your business practices.
Both.
Yeah. Others?
Did I mention I'm retired?
Yeah, I know, exactly.
No,
That's
but
why I like asking you some of the harder questions.
Right.
Yeah.
But it goes back to the same thing. It's about culture. You demand, you instill, you preach to a certain culture, and you demand really that everybody respects each other. Nobody has that right to do anything else, and you're stronger by having more diversity. And if you're smart enough to do it, you'll find that you're a stronger company.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, so for us, diversity. So you're kind of the opposite as far as gender. We have a lot more males in our industry, and that's always been a challenge for us. I think where we work from a racial background, we've always reflected, I think, the communities we're in. Of all different races, but the gender one's been a challenge for us since the beginning. We're doing much better now than we were 8-10 years ago, and I think there's a lot of reasons why, but we're also doing some more we're doing more to attract, I think, women into logistics. It's not just talking to, a creepy truck driver, you'd hear that, like, people like, I don't know if I want to talk to this truck driver on the road, But it's a lot more than that. So like, late last year we hosted Women in Logistics with FGCU Supply Chain, and we had probably 70 people show up for that, which was well attended. We brought the vice president of Cummins Engines, who's a very, very talented female. She's written books about men working with women in the workforce in today's environment, today's environment, things like that. So I think creating some programs and highlighting stuff. I mean, one thing I know we did at the end of last year, we had just a potluck, but it was an ethnic-based potluck, right? So like Caribbean. I think you start doing stuff where people, I know our team doesn't like to be forced. They don't like force feeding at all, I don't think. And so you do stuff that allows them to participate and get educated on a certain aspect of a different background. I think if you can find creative ways to do that, I think it's a better feeling whenever you're trying to get everybody to understand and learn about different backgrounds. And you got to be creative, and it takes work, and it's challenging to come up with those ideas. So.
Yeah, fantastic. So we've got time for just one or two more questions, and I really want to get to this one. I've been holding it, came in really early, but I think that there's a lot to learn from failure and things that didn't succeed. So we started out with, what are you really hopeful about in the workforce, recruiting, retention, supply chain? Is there anything that you all have tried in your businesses around this subject that's just been a massive failure, but you learned something from it and could move on? Because there are people out here dealing with these same challenges every single day. And so what can they learn from something that one of you or all of you tried that just did not go the way that you thought it should?
If in business,
The retired person can answer
right, I
first.
can do this, right.
You can really be transparent.
You make a lot of decisions as a leader every single day. And the thought that you're going to make all those decisions correctly is just naive. It's just not going to happen. But the idea that you could learn something and you recover quickly, and don't take it too hard, is the right thing to do. It's all about make a mistake, recover quickly. Make them, because if you're trying to be cutting edge, you're trying to do new things every single day, it simply isn't going to all work out. That's just reality. And then you don't take it as a personal failure. You just learn something from it and move on. And be smart enough not to make the same mistake again. Document it, learn from it, and move on. And that's, I don't know about these guys, but I can't imagine, going all day long and not making any mistakes. I don't know how that happens.
Yeah. Well, you spoke to it even when you were talking about this challenge between, do you keep a person on when you're just really struggling, and you said no, acknowledge that maybe that was the wrong hire and you missed it. And
the biggest mistake you can make is once you make that decision to get rid of somebody, get rid of them. Because it won't get better. It never gets better. And I did it for 30 years, and it was, I can't even think of a time when I thought I was going to get rid of somebody, and then I thought, a year later, God, I'm glad I didn't get rid of that person. I don't that doesn't usually happen. It's just the opposite. I should have listened to my gut.
yeah, I think it's really challenging now because we all need people, and so you got to really do that gut check.
But you got to say, am I better off without them than having a person who isn't good fit? And honestly, as a leader, it's our job to let them go free, because really they'll be happier in the long run. You most often, once it gets to that point, you're not doing you or them a favor. They're better off. Especially in today's world, it was different when you couldn't get another job. Today you can get 20 more jobs at the end of the day.
Okay, who else wants to share a fail that the rest
Brian,
of
you
us
ever make
can
a
learn from?
mistake?
I've never made it. No, this is just a comment. Like, probably the biggest mistake we've made, and especially me personally, is not taking action. Not doing something. That's it. It's whether you have too much going on or something's too much work. But if you know it's the right thing to do, You got to take action. There's a lot of great stuff you can do for your team to enhance the culture, but all of it takes effort. It takes time. It takes mental time. It takes energy. So doing that is a big one. And I thought of something earlier. I just can't think of it.
Well, you'll get back to us.
We've made plenty of mistakes, but
Right.
but yeah, no, I think that's a big one that everybody does. They know what to do, but they don't do it.
Yeah, and that in the workforce recruiting arena, should I go for it or not? Sometimes you just have to decide. Yeah. How about you?
I think that creating an environment where not only yourself but your team feels that failure is not the end of the world. We talk a lot about failing fast, right? So if you're going to fail fast. Recognize, to your point, document, don't repeat it, and move on. That's how we've had some of our greatest learning experiences. So we don't want to be void of the learning experiences. I would say from an organizational standpoint and I was actually running point on the project at the time, and it goes back to opportunity for AI and wanting to make it work and spending too much time and not realizing this is not going to work, even though we have the investment, we need to cut it loose and move on. So I think that we've learned from that and we're better at decision making because of it. If I could go back, I probably would have changed that decision because we tried to make it work for too long. But I do believe in creating an environment where, and cutting yourself a break too. Just understanding that failure is going to happen, and it's how you handle it with grace that makes all the difference in the world for yourself and for your team. So I would say that.
And I'll say what I was
Did you
thinking.
think of it? You
Yeah,
thought of it?
I was thinking about it. Yeah, so I think, and it's kind of a general thing too, but one big failure that I think everybody in here, we got a lot of great leaders here, is just not getting input from your team or just anybody else whenever a decision is being made, whether it's a small one or even a critical one. If it's a decision that affects people's income, you definitely want to get. That's one thing you got to be real careful when you mess with people's income and livelihood. If you're not getting, feedback from, the stakeholders in it, or just anybody that is a good soundboard for you, more times than not, there's some flaw with your decision. The life I'm living and what I think works is not the same for the 22-year-old that just started. And as much as I want to think I'm still 22, I'm not. And my life's changed a lot since then, and my perspective is going to be totally different than theirs about whatever decision is we're making.
Yeah. Thanks for being transparent about that. So, Frank, you kicked us off with innovation and the Edison Awards being here and celebrating innovation here in the birthplace of Edison. I guess not the birthplace, the vacation place of Edison, right? But the birthplace of many of his innovations. And this last question, I think we started with innovation and we can end with innovation. So innovations are typically inspired by a problem, one or two of which we've identified today. But does your industry face a current challenge that would benefit from an outside perspective? And the person said, let's collaborate here. So is there a problem right now that you just say, I cannot figure this out, that innovation, and I don't think you can innovate yourself out of every problem. I think it's a combination of innovation and relational partnerships that you all have mentioned here today. But is there a problem that you just said, somebody's got to find a solution to this? Brian, earlier you said workforce housing, but in your industries.
You mean why do I drive down the road and have 19 red lights in a row and I'm going the speed limit? I mean, there's all kinds of things. There really isn't. I mean, I think you can innovate your way through everything. I think we all could think of 100 things a day that you could do to make it. I mean, at our company, software is just a huge issue, and ERPs and CRMs and all the different software that you need that our company would be more efficient. I commend NeoGenomics for trying to look at, being lean at everything they do. And that's what we all need to do. And so, sure, I think you'd be silly to think you couldn't get outside help. and work together. I mean, I think that's what we're doing in this building, the Collaboratory. Is that not why we're here? It is together we're stronger. I mean, again, I said it a few times. It's so nice to have people from education, people from government, people from industry here. And that's what you guys have been doing, and that's why you're successful, is getting people to collaborate together. You know, I think before we were all kind of like more protectionist than we are today. And maybe it's just because we got to know each other or whatever it is. But together we can solve a lot more problems than we can by ourselves.
That's an innovation in and of itself, because
Right.
people haven't been doing it.
Right.
Helen, what's a problem that, boy, if someone could come in and fix it at your company, what would it be?
Well, we need a new CEO right now. Choose my words carefully here. I think that with everything that's going on, and I don't know that this is solutioning a problem, but you know, I think that a lot of things people think that they're individual problems. And when they have a conversation, they find out that, you know, the person they're having the conversation with has a very similar issue. And I think that it is partnering and not working in a siloed. I think that people are afraid of kind of going back to failure, right? They don't want to admit that they tried something and it didn't work, or, you know, whatever the situation is. And I think that the transparency of being open and just saying, you know, hey, I have this going on. Have you experienced it, and what did you do about it? And having opportunities like this to have those conversations is important. The other issue other than CEO is we're having some challenges just with coming out of the pandemic, with public health emergencies still being in place and things like that. It is challenging for us because we have a lot of things on hold. We have real estate decisions that are on hold because we don't know how long people are going to be able to work remote. And staffing models and things like that. So that's, for me, that's what keeps me up at night is, you know, am I going to have to return 800 people in 2 weeks, or, you know, something crazy like that. But we're working with individuals to help us through that. But that's the biggest challenge I have. But just going back to being transparent, having open dialogue with people, and not feeling like, okay, because I don't know the answer, or I did fail at this, and sharing that and getting other people's input and opinion. I think that we all could do probably more of, and come up with better solutions together.
Yeah. I mean, internally, one of our, it's like a lingering problem, and maybe some outside perspective would help, because we haven't really figured out how to solve it. Is our night dispatch team. So in our world, we're 24/7, 365. We have, you know, just shy of 20 people that work throughout the night, but routing the calls, determining who does what. Often those folks are new because we've had a lot of turnover. The desire for people to work through the night has gone down a lot, or maybe it wasn't a desire before, but that was all they could do. And so we've had a lot of issues with that. So we outside help probably could give us a different perspective of how we manage that business. And so I think that'd be good. And then just in our industry specifically, I mean, you know, we have a lot of issues with trucks waiting at receivers or shipping docks. There's a massive difference between all the different players in that. Some places are very efficient, some are horrible. Like the issues with the Long Beach ports and all those boats being backed up. Most of that is actually because of the scheduling system. It wasn't 24/7 or whatever. Like that was probably the biggest problem with that. We pick up at all these ports. So there's a lot of issues in our industry where an outside perspective would be helpful.
All right, so you've got a whole crew of innovators coming to town. You've got a couple really good ones right here. We could, and people in this room, not just from out of town. If you all have ideas for that, I'm thinking something about partnering with insomniacs, but I can't really get that totally solidified in my mind right now. Well, what I loved about this format is that we took our time. Thank you. You all gave so much of your time today, and it really allowed us to ask questions and give each of you a time to respond. And I know that everybody in this room appreciates it. And I have to say, from a grocery store cashier, an Italian bakery accountant, and somebody that wasn't quite sure what they were getting into with logistics. I think you all have done really, really great in the workforce, and we really appreciate you. Thank you so much for your
Thank
time.
you.
Everybody,
Thank you.
please appreciate them.
Good job, Ryan. Great job.
So, as Frank mentioned, this is a series that we're going to keep going, and we would love you for you to join us again. Keep an eye out for our summer Lightbulb series announcement, and we're going to take on the topic of deserts. Now, when I was practicing this, I thought it said desserts, and I was really excited. I was like, we're going to take on the topic of
Cool.
desserts, fabulous. But no, it's deserts, really gaps. So food deserts, healthcare deserts, broadband deserts, journalism deserts, like what is missing? And it kind of speaks to this community that we want to create so that we can attract and retain the workforce. So it's all connected. If you or your company would like to partner on this Lightbulb series, if there's a particular topic or this is kind of the thing that gets you excited, contact us. And like Frank said, there's a great opportunity on your table to get involved in the Edison Awards. So lots of great opportunities for us to all stay connected, and so appreciate everybody being here today, and I can't wait to see you next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.